Back in the early days of broadband, we used to wait patiently for a single JPEG to load top to bottom, line by pixelated line. Today, we are apparently losing our collective minds because a piece of bleeding-edge silicon might be delayed by a few months. Welcome back. Let's separate the real leaks from the noise. This week's Apple landscape is unusually dense, packed with reliable supply chain whispers regarding the elusive M6 OLED touchscreen MacBook Ultra, a surprising roadmap detailing 6 entirely new product categories, and a rare moment of candor from Tim Cook about his biggest failure as CEO. If you've been holding off on a major studio upgrade, or you're just trying to figure out where Apple is steering the ship in 2026 and beyond, you'll want to hear this. Let's start with the hardware that has most of us reaching for our wallets, the M6 OLED touchscreen MacBook Ultra. According to reliable sources, specifically Mark Gurman's latest supply chain checks, the release date is shifting. Up until about 48 hours ago, every indicator pointed to a late 2026 release. Apple was allegedly right on schedule, but as anyone who remembers the component crunches of the past decades knows, the supply chain is a fickle beast. Gurman is now explicitly stating that a delay is plausible. Coming from him, a shift in vocabulary from on track to plausible delay is the equivalent of a siren going off in Cupertino. The culprit, memory chips. There's a tightening in the global memory supply chain right now, and while I always hoped Apple's massive purchasing power would make them immune to these bottlenecks, physics and fabrication limits apply to everyone. What this means in real life is that we are likely looking at an early 2027 release for the MacBook Ultra. Unfortunately, that delay is causing a ripple effect across the entire high-end Mac desktop lineup. The new Mac Studio refreshes are reportedly being pushed back as far as October 2027. For those of us doing heavy 3D rendering or massive video timelines, this genuinely stings. Think about it, the fastest Mac Studio currently sitting on a desk is still running the M3 Ultra. Meanwhile, Apple is already deep into the mid-cycle of the M5 architecture. We are drastically overdue for a workstation upgrade. However, it's not all grim news on the desktop front. If we look down the ladder at the Mac Mini, things are getting very interesting. Right now, the M4 Mac Mini is completely sold out in almost every conceivable configuration, right down to the base model. This is an anomaly. We rarely see a complete stock wipeout like this unless a transition is imminent. It strongly suggests that the M5 and M5 Pro Mac Minis are essentially on the loading dock. Some analysts are attributing this sales spike to the sudden rise of personal AI hardware, things like OpenClaw, the Hermes agent, and the new Perplexity computer, driving demand for compact, efficient local processing nodes. But the more grounded reality is likely a mix of the memory crisis and Apple reallocating their fabrication lines entirely to the M5 node. The real question is whether Apple will maintain that incredibly aggressive $599 starting price. Selling an M5 Mac Mini for the same price as the entry-level $599 MacBook Neo would be a ruthlessly effective strategy to pull more switchers into the macOS ecosystem. Still, given inflation and memory costs, I wouldn't be surprised to see a subtle $50 bump across the board. Now, what's interesting here is Apple's long-term hardware strategy. We aren't just looking at iterative chip bumps anymore. Gurman's latest drop outlines 6 entirely new product categories currently in active development. We are looking at AI-powered AirPods, smart glasses, a wearable pendant, a smart home display, a tabletop robot, and an Apple-branded security camera. Now I know what you're thinking. AirPods aren't exactly a new frontier. We've been wearing them for almost 10 years. But the integration of multimodal AI could fundamentally change them from dumb audio receivers to proactive digital assistants. But the item that genuinely caught my attention is the wearable pendant. It sounds suspiciously similar to the dedicated AI hardware project Jony Ive and Sam Altman are developing over at OpenAI. An Apple pendant would presumably act as a screen-free, always-listening node for your personal intelligence system. As for the tabletop robot, I'll reserve judgment until I see it, but I suspect it's more of an articulating arm for a smart display rather than a mechanical butler. If you are the type who likes to research these shifts deeply before investing in a new ecosystem, stick around and make sure you're subscribed, as we'll be tracking the specific technical details of these categories closely. If you think a wearable AI pendant sounds like science fiction, you need to see what Apple's engineers were up to in Rio de Janeiro this week. Apple quietly attended ICLR, which is one of the most prestigious AI conferences on the planet, and they casually demonstrated a new internal model called Sharp. This model can take a single, flat 2D photograph and reconstruct a completely photorealistic 3D scene from it in less than 1 second. What makes this genuinely staggering isn't just the speed, but the hardware. They ran this real-time demo locally on an M5 iPad Pro. No cloud compute, no server racks, just a tablet. They also showcased massive on-device large language models running smoothly on a MacBook Pro equipped with an M5 Max chip, utilizing MLX, Apple's open-source machine learning framework. This is the quiet, calm authority of Apple's R&D at work. While other companies are shouting about server-side AI wrappers, Apple is steadily building the infrastructure to run these models entirely on your local silicon, keeping your data private and your latency practically non-existent. Speaking of the software that runs all this silicon, iOS 26.5 is currently in its fourth beta and nearing a public release. It's a dense update. The standout features include the ability to push live activities to third-party accessories, meaning your smart home gear or third-party watches can now tap directly into real-time iOS data. Apple Maps is also getting a highly requested suggested places predictive engine, and we are finally seeing the groundwork for true end-to-end encryption in RCS messages. But there is a subtle App Store policy change hidden in this beta that could actually matter because it shifts how we pay for software. Apple is introducing monthly subscriptions that require a yearly commitment. Basically, developers can offer you the discounted annual rate, but let you pay it off in monthly installments. Once you agree, you are locked in for the 12-month billing cycle. It's essentially financing for apps. We are actually looking at integrating this exact model into our own wallpaper app to give you guys more flexibility. Speaking of which, if you're tired of the default OS backgrounds, our app currently offers a lifetime tier for just $64.99. That unlocks over 3,000 wallpapers in pristine 8K resolution. When you consider that most premium creators charge $16 for a pack of 10 4K images, the math heavily favors our lifetime pass. We have some massive updates rolling out for the app soon, so check the link in the description if you want to optimize your desktop aesthetic without the subscription fatigue. Alongside the iOS update, the standalone Apple Invites app just received a major overhaul. It now features deep iMessage integration. You can generate, share, and RSVP to events directly inside a chat thread without ever bouncing out to a separate app. They've added image playground integration so you can use AI to generate custom, theme-specific invite backgrounds on the fly. You can manage guest lists, export event cards directly to your social feeds, and crucially set hard time zones so your remote colleagues actually show up to the virtual meeting on time. It is a highly polished update, though it frustratingly remains an iPhone-exclusive platform for now. Finally, I want to touch on a rather reflective moment from Tim Cook this week. Having been at the helm for nearly 15 years, he was asked to name the product he is most proud of and conversely his biggest regret. His proudest achievement, the Apple Watch, and honestly it makes perfect sense. It's not just the most successful smartwatch ever made, it became the most successful watch in human history, period. It shifted Apple from a computer company to a legitimate health and wellness infrastructure. But his biggest regret is what earns my respect. He pointed straight to the disastrous launch of Apple Maps in 2012. He openly admitted that the software simply was not ready for the public, but executive pressure pushed it out the door anyway, a decision that directly resulted in the firing of iOS chief Scott Forstall. It is incredibly rare to see a Fortune 10 CEO take unvarnished ownership of a massive public failure. It takes a certain level of mature confidence to admit when you ship to bait a product as a finished good. So that is the landscape this week. From silicon delays and localized AI breakthroughs to a roadmap that pushes Apple into entirely new hardware frontiers. What do you guys think about the wearable AI pendant? Is it the next Apple Watch or is it destined to be a forgotten experiment? Let me know your thoughts down below. I'm Daniel of Tech, thanks for watching and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.